Lone Pine, California, May 21st, 1924, 1:30 a.m. 40 men in a caravan of Model T Fords drive 60 miles south from Bishop in darkness. They carry 500 pounds of dynamite. Near Lone Pine, they pull over, walk to the Los Angeles Aqueduct, and blow up a section of the concrete canal. The explosion echoes across Owens Valley. Los Angeles calls it terrorism. The valley calls it self-defense. 3 years earlier, William Mulholland, the man who built the aqueduct, opened the gates at the dedication ceremony and declared, "There it is, take it." Los Angeles took it, all of it. The Owens River that had made the valley fertile, the water that filled Owens Lake, the irrigation that sustained 7,000 farmers and ranchers who believed connection meant survival. Highway 395 runs 1,300 miles from Southern California to the Canadian border. It's the only continuous north-south corridor east of the Sierra Nevada. It passes through Owens Valley, past the dry bed where Owens Lake used to be, through towns that once thrived and now barely exist. The road still works. That's the tragedy. Because Highway 395 didn't fail. It succeeded perfectly at its real purpose, providing access for extraction. And once Los Angeles finished extracting water, land, control, the road remained as a monument to what happens when infrastructure serves the system that builds it, not the communities it passes through. This is the story of how a highway enabled the quiet destruction of an entire region, and how that destruction was rational, legal, and inevitable once the road made it possible. Before Los Angeles came, Owens Valley was called the Switzerland of California. The comparison wasn't hyperbole. Fed by snowmelt from the Sierra Nevada's eastern slope, the Owens River ran 110 miles through a high desert valley, emptying into Owens Lake, a 110-square-mile body of water so large that steamboats crossed it. The Paiute people had irrigated here for centuries, developing sophisticated canal systems to tap mountain streams and grow crops in an arid landscape. When white settlers arrived in the 1850s and 1860s, they found a valley with rich soil and reliable water. By 1900, Owens Valley supported productive agriculture: alfalfa, grain, meadowgrass, orchards. The population grew to about 7,000. Towns formed. Schools opened. Banks financed farms. The valley wasn't wealthy, but it was stable, a functioning agricultural economy in a region where water made the difference between fertility and desert. Then Fred Eaton took a camping trip. In the 1890s, Eaton, former mayor of Los Angeles, looked down from the mountains and saw the Owens River winding through the valley. According to historians who studied his papers, Eaton thought, "What a waste of water." He spent the next decade trying to convince anyone who would listen that Los Angeles could build an aqueduct, use gravity to bring water 250 miles south from the high-altitude valley to the thirsty city at sea level. No one took him seriously, until he met William Mulholland. Mulholland was a self-educated Irish immigrant who'd risen to become superintendent of the Los Angeles Water Department. When Eaton brought him to Owens Valley, Mulholland saw what Eaton saw: not a functioning agricultural community, but a resource waiting to be tapped. "When I saw it staring me in the face," Mulholland later said, "I couldn't back away from it." The vision was clear. Los Angeles in 1900 had 200,000 people and was running out of water. The city couldn't grow without more supply. Owens Valley had abundant runoff from the Sierra Nevada and sat at 4,000 feet elevation, high enough that gravity alone would send water racing down an aqueduct without pumps. Mulholland's famous line captured the philosophy: "If you don't get the water, you won't need it." Los Angeles needed water to survive. Owens Valley happened to have it. Geography and engineering aligned. What happened next wasn't villainy, it was logic. Cold, systemic, rational logic that would destroy one community to build another. Fred Eaton went to Owens Valley in 1903 and started buying property and water rights. He didn't tell the farmers and ranchers he was acting for Los Angeles. He didn't mention the city's plan to build an aqueduct. He just offered cash for land and options on water and people. trusting a former mayor, seeing an opportunity to sell, took the deals. Eaton also bought a 23,000-acre cattle ranch in Long Valley for himself, planning to sell most of it back to Los Angeles at a profit for use as a reservoir. Historians still debate whether this was shrewd business or outright fraud. Eaton denied duplicity until his death. His grandson, John Eaton, who lived on the last acres of that land passed down through the family, believed his grandfather acted honorably. The Valley residents learned the truth in July 1905, when the Los Angeles Times, owned by Harrison Gray Otis, part of the group secretly buying San Fernando Valley land that would become valuable once the aqueduct brought water, ran the headline, "Titanic Project to Give the City a River." People were furious. Eaton had to leave town for a while, but the damage was done. Los Angeles had secured enough water rights and land to proceed. The fix was in. Joseph Lippincott, the regional engineer for the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, was supposed to be planning an irrigation project for Owens Valley farmers. He was also Fred Eaton's old friend. Eaton hired Lippincott as a consultant for Los Angeles, doubling his federal salary, in exchange for Lippincott giving Eaton a consulting role on the Owens project. The federal irrigation plan that would have secured water for the valley died quietly. Los Angeles' aqueduct moved forward. In 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt, pressured by Los Angeles businessmen, granted the city free access to federal lands along the aqueduct route. The decision came down to a choice. As Congressman Sylvester Smith of Inyo County argued, is irrigating Southern California more valuable than irrigating Owens Valley? Roosevelt decided it was. One city's growth mattered more than one valley's survival. Construction began in 1908. William Mulholland directed the project, an engineering marvel involving tunnels, siphons, canals, and 233 miles of infrastructure across the Mojave Desert. Thousands of laborers worked in brutal conditions. In the winter, it was just as windy and bitter cold as it was hot in summer, said Raymond Taylor, the aqueduct's medical director. On November 5, 1913, the Los Angeles Aqueduct opened. Mulholland stood at the gates, opened them, watched water rush forth, and spoke 5 words to the mayor. "There it is. Take it." Los Angeles took it. Highway 395 evolved from early auto trails and regional roads connecting mining towns, agricultural communities, and frontier settlements through eastern California. By the 1920s, it had become a continuous route, not yet numbered, but functioning as the only reliable north-south corridor east of the Sierra Nevada. The highway ran directly through Owens Valley, passing Bishop, Big Pine, Independence, Lone Pine. It connected these communities to each other and to the wider world. Ranchers used it to move cattle. Farmers hauled produce. Families drove to visit relatives in other valley towns. But the road did something else. It provided access for Los Angeles to reach and control the valley. Heavy equipment could be transported. Crews could be deployed quickly. The aqueduct could be built, maintained, monitored. When Los Angeles started buying up valley land in a checkerboard pattern, purchasing one farm but not the adjacent one, isolating holdouts, pitting neighbor against neighbor, the road made that strategy possible. Without Highway 395, extracting Owens Valley's water would have been far more difficult. The road didn't cause the water war, but it enabled every phase of it: the initial construction, the ongoing control, the eventual total domination. Infrastructure doesn't just connect, it gives access. And access can mean extraction as easily as prosperity. At first, the aqueduct seemed to work for everyone. Los Angeles got water. Owens Valley farmers still had their irrigation. The aqueduct intake was below their ditches, so theoretically they kept their supply while Los Angeles got the surplus that flowed past. The Switzerland of California label held for a few more years. Then Los Angeles kept growing. Between 1909 and 1928, the city expanded from 61 square miles to over 440 square miles. Population tripled from 300,000 to 1.2 million. The aqueduct flow that had seemed surplus suddenly wasn't enough. And Mulholland had made a critical error. He'd built no major reservoir. In wet years, excess water was wasted. In dry years, and the 1920s brought drought, there wasn't enough for both the city and the valley. Los Angeles made a choice. It began pumping groundwater directly from the aquifer beneath Owens Valley. Water tables dropped. Wells went dry. Fields that had been green turned brown. Alfalfa gave way to sagebrush. Orchards were bulldozed. The valley that had been irrigated into fertility reverted to desert. By 1923, farmers and ranchers formed an irrigation cooperative headed by Wilfred and Mark Watterson, owners of the Inyo County Bank. They tried to negotiate as a collective. Los Angeles played them. The city bought key water rights from bitter farmers willing to sell out their neighbors, isolating the rest. As one historian put it, L.A. had outplayed the Owens Valley. They were very crafty in acquiring properties at the intakes to some of these canals and ditches, basically isolating the other farmers and ranchers from that water supply. Wilfred Watterson went to Los Angeles to try negotiating a settlement. The city seemed willing to compromise, preserve some valley agriculture while still supplying Los Angeles. The valley leaders believed it. They told people to hold on, to wait, that a deal was coming. It was a ruse. Los Angeles was never going to negotiate. They didn't have to. They owned land surrounding the remaining farmers and ranchers. The valley was encircled, legally trapped. In May 1924, Los Angeles filed a lawsuit against the Owens Valley Irrigation District, claiming farmers were illegally using water that belonged to the city. That's when the dynamite came out. The first bombing happened at 1:30 a.m. on May 21, 1924. 40 men from Bishop drove 60 miles south, planted explosives near Lone Pine, and blew up the aqueduct's concrete canal. The damage was minimal, symbolic more than destructive, but the message was clear. Enough. Los Angeles called them terrorists. The mayor offered a $10,000 reward. The Los Angeles Examiner ran threats against Mulholland. Armed guards were stationed along the entire 233-mile aqueduct. The valley saw it differently. Every resident of the Owens Valley knows who did the dynamiting, one investigator remarked, but no one will tell. Some of the most prominent and wealthy farmers and ranchers in the Owens Valley are involved. The community circled its wagons. These weren't criminals. They were neighbors, fighting back the only way left. 6 months later, on November 1st, 1924, the rebellion escalated. In broad daylight, 70 ranchers and farmers led by Mark Watterson drove out to the Alabama Gates spillway near Lone Pine in a caravan of Model Ts. They seized the gates, opened the valves, and let water flow back into the Owens River. For 4 days, they held the spillway. Families brought food. Supporters gathered. The occupation drew sympathetic news coverage nationwide. The Owens Valley ranchers were hailed as folk heroes, modern pioneers standing up to the encroaching city. Wilfred Watterson went to Los Angeles again. This time, they reached an agreement. The valley would release the gates. Los Angeles would negotiate in good faith. 4 days later, the anarchists left. The gates closed. Water flowed south again. And Los Angeles kept buying land, isolating holdouts, strangling the valley's economy. The negotiations were always a lie. Between 1924 and 1931, the valley fought back with 11 separate attacks on the aqueduct, dynamite, sabotage, destruction of city property. What the Los Angeles Record called evidence that the fighting spirit of the pioneer type still lies close to the surface. But the outcome was inevitable. By the end of 1926, Los Angeles controlled 90% of Owens Valley land and water. The war was over. The city had won. In August 1927, the Inyo County Bank, the Wattersons Bank, collapsed. An audit revealed massive shortages. The brothers were indicted for embezzlement, tried and convicted on 36 counts. Since all local business ran through their bank, the closure left merchants and customers with whatever small cash they had on hand. The valley's organized resistance collapsed with the bank. Later, analysis suggested the Wattersons had been using bank funds to support the fight against Los Angeles, not stealing for personal gain, but desperate men making desperate choices. It didn't matter. The valley was broken. By 1934, Owens Lake was gone. Not shrunk, not reduced, gone. A 110-square-mile body of water that had supported steamboat traffic dried up completely. Today, Highway 395 runs past the dry lake bed. You can see it from the road. Cracked alkaline flats, dust storms, a landscape that looks like the surface of a dead planet. On windy days, toxic dust blows off the lake bed. Arsenic, cadmium, particles small enough to lodge in lungs, creating some of the worst air quality in the United States. The towns along Highway 395 in Owens Valley still exist. Bishop, Big Pine, Independence, Lone Pine. They have gas stations, motels, diners. Tourism keeps some money flowing. People heading to ski resorts or Death Valley or the eastern Sierra Wilderness. But these aren't functioning economic centers. They're corridor towns, places you pass through on the way somewhere else. Schools closed. Banks failed. Young people left. Property values cratered. The valley's population dropped by more than half. What remained was a controlled landscape. Los Angeles owns most of the land, manages the water, dictates what can and can't happen in a valley 250 miles from the city. Mulholland famously warned an associate in the early days, "Do not go to Inyo County. We are going to turn that country dry." He was right. That's exactly what happened. And Highway 395 made it possible. The road carried the equipment that built the aqueduct. It carried the workers who operated it. It carried Los Angeles officials who came to buy land, negotiate deals, enforce control. It carried armed guards to protect the aqueduct from sabotage. The road connected Owens Valley to the outside world. That connection allowed extraction. Once extraction was complete, the road remained, still functional, still carrying traffic through a region that never recovered. Here's what makes the Owens Valley tragedy different from other infrastructure stories. There was no accident, no engineering failure, no unforeseen disaster. The system worked exactly as designed. Los Angeles needed water. Engineers found water. They built infrastructure to take it. The law allowed it. The federal government approved it. The market enabled it. Farmers and ranchers who sold out. Businessmen who speculated on land values. Politicians who prioritized urban growth over rural stability. It was rational. Every step made sense from Los Angeles's perspective. The city had 200,000 people who needed water, then 300,000, then 1 million. Growth demanded supply. The Owens Valley had supply. Geography made extraction feasible. Engineering made it practical. William Mulholland wasn't a villain. He was an engineer solving a problem. His solution destroyed Owens Valley, but that destruction was acceptable within the system's logic. Urban survival matters more than rural stability. President Roosevelt's 1906 decision crystallized it. Irrigating Southern California was more valuable than irrigating Owens Valley. One city's growth outweighed one valley's existence. That philosophy, infrastructure serves the system that builds it, not the communities it passes through, is what killed Owens Valley. Highway 395 embodied that philosophy. The road didn't belong to the valley. It belonged to California, which meant it belonged to whoever had the power to use it. And Los Angeles had the power. The Paiute people understood this pattern long before Highway 395 existed. White settlers had used violence and deceit to dispossess them of land they'd irrigated for centuries. A local newspaper in 1927 captured the irony. The fighting spirit of the pioneer type still lies close to the surface in Owens Valley residents resisting Los Angeles. But those same residents were descendants of pioneers who'd violently displaced the Paiute less than a century earlier. Extraction builds on extraction. The strong take from the weak, then call it progress. Highway 395 still runs through Owens Valley. It's a beautiful drive. The Sierra Nevada rising dramatically to the west, the White Mountains and Inyo Mountains to the east. Vast, high desert stretching between them. Tourists love it. Photographers stop to capture Owens Lake's dry bed at sunset. Hikers use it to access trailheads. Skiers drive it to reach Mammoth Mountain. The road serves its purpose, moving people through a landscape they consume visually but don't inhabit economically. Los Angeles still takes Owens Valley water. In 1941, the city extended its reach north to Mono Lake, diverting that water too. By the 1980s, Mono Lake's ecosystem was collapsing. Water levels dropped, salinity increased, bird populations crashed, environmental groups fought back. The Mono Lake Committee engaged in litigation from 1979 to 1994, forcing Los Angeles to stop diverting water and allowing the lake to recover. Owens Valley got similar intervention, but much later. In 2006, after decades of dust storms and toxic air quality from the dry lake bed, agreements were reached to return some water to the lower Owens River, not enough to restore the valley's agriculture, just enough to mitigate the worst environmental damage. Los Angeles still controls the land. The valley still depends on tourism, recreation, and government employment, industries that serve people passing through, not communities building something permanent. Highway 395 remains strategically important. It's a vital military route. Access to bases, training grounds, weapons testing facilities in the high desert. It's essential for emergency services, fire suppression in the eastern Sierra, search and rescue operations. The corridor functions exactly as intended. The tragedy isn't that the road failed, it's that the road succeeded. It fulfilled its real purpose perfectly, providing access for extraction. And once extraction was complete, once Los Angeles had taken the water, purchased the land, established permanent control, the road stayed, carrying traffic through the corpse of what Owens Valley used to be. The lesson Highway 395 teaches is darker than the other infrastructure tragedies. The Cypress structure collapsed in 15 seconds. The Dixie Highway was bypassed by interstates. Those failures were visible, dramatic, undeniable. Owens Valley's failure was quiet, legal, rational. Nobody died in an instant. The valley just bled out slowly over decades, water table by water table, farm by farm, family by family, until what remained was a controlled corridor serving the system that destroyed it. In 1942, Highway 395 carried different cargo through Owens Valley. Just south of Independence, the U.S. government built Manzanar War Relocation Center on 6,200 acres of land Los Angeles had purchased from valley ranchers years earlier. Between March and November 1942, more than 10,000 Japanese Americans were forcibly relocated there. American citizens, most from Los Angeles and surrounding areas, removed from their homes under Executive Order 9066. They arrived on Highway 395, buses and cars carrying families who'd been given days to sell everything, close businesses, abandoned homes. The highway that had enabled Los Angeles to extract Owens Valley's water now carried people being extracted from Los Angeles itself. Manzanar internees lived in tar paper barracks with no insulation, enduring summer heat and winter cold in a high desert that offered no protection. They looked west at the Sierra Nevada, mountains they couldn't cross. They looked east at guard towers, Reminder they were prisoners in their own country. They grew vegetables in gardens irrigated with water, piped from the same system that had dried up Owens Lake. The irony was brutal. Land that Los Angeles had taken from valley farmers, rendering it economically useless, became the perfect site for a concentration camp. Remote, controlled, accessible only by Highway 395. If you wanted to remove people from society and make sure they couldn't leave, this was ideal terrain. After the war, Manzanar was dismantled. Most internees returned to Los Angeles to find their homes sold, their businesses closed, their lives destroyed. Highway 395 carried them back south, past the same dry lake bed, through the same emptied valley. Today, Manzanar National Historic Site preserves part of the camp. Highway 395 runs right past it. You can pull over, walk through the interpretive center, see the guard tower and barracks, read the names of the 10,000 imprisoned there. It's another layer to the highway's legacy. Infrastructure enabling extraction. First water, then land, then people. The road-serving systems of power carrying away resources and human beings, leaving behind controlled landscapes and historical markers. The Owens Valley Water War exposed something fundamental about California that remains true a century later. The state has always contained two completely different worlds that barely acknowledge each other. Southern California, Los Angeles specifically, operates on growth logic. More people, more development, more expansion. The limiting factor is always supply: water, land, energy, infrastructure. When supply runs short, you find more. You engineer solutions. You take what you need from wherever it exists. If rural areas have what cities need, the cities take it. That's not villainy. It's how urban systems survive. Eastern California, Owens Valley, the rural interior, the agricultural regions operates on sustainability logic. What you have determines what you can support. Water defines carrying capacity. You build communities scaled to resources. When resources run short, you conserve or collapse. The idea that someone might take your water and send it 250 miles away to serve people you've never met feels like theft, because it is theft. Legal, rational, government-approved theft, but theft nonetheless. These two Californias have never reconciled. They can't. Their foundational logic is incompatible. Los Angeles looks at Owens Valley and sees waste. Why should 7,000 people control water that could support millions? The utilitarian calculus is obvious. The greatest good for the greatest number means taking valley water and giving it to the city. Owens Valley looks at Los Angeles and sees a monster, a city that shouldn't exist, growing past the carrying capacity of its local environment, surviving by draining distant regions, treating rural communities as resource colonies. The valley's anger isn't just about losing water, it's about being treated as expendable. William Mulholland embodied Los Angeles' perspective perfectly. He saw the Owens River and thought immediately of millions of people getting water. He didn't see farmers losing livelihoods because in his mental framework, those farmers mattered less than the city's survival, not morally, just mathematically. More people in Los Angeles than in Owens Valley. Therefore, Los Angeles gets the water. Mark and Wilfred Watterson embodied the valley's perspective. They tried negotiating, tried forming cooperatives, tried every legal avenue to protect their community. When all of that failed and Los Angeles filed lawsuits claiming farmers were stealing water that had always been theirs, they saw no choice but violence. The dynamite wasn't terrorism. It was desperation. Both sides thought they were right. Both sides were right within their own logic. That's what makes it a systemic tragedy. Instead of a story with heroes and villains, Highway 395 didn't cause the conflict, but it made the Los Angeles victory inevitable. Without the road, accessing Owens Valley would have been prohibitively difficult. The aqueduct might never have been built. The valley might have remained isolated enough to survive on its own terms. But the road came, And with the road came access. And with access came extraction. And extraction, once it begins, doesn't stop until there's nothing left worth taking. Owens Valley wasn't unique. It was a template. After securing Owens water, Los Angeles turned to the Colorado River. When that wasn't enough, the city looked north to the Feather River. The California State Water Project, one of the largest water transfer systems in the world, carries Northern California water hundreds of miles south, to cities and farms that couldn't survive without it. The pattern is always the same. Identify resources in areas with small populations. Use legal and political power to establish control. Build infrastructure to enable extraction. And, when local resistance emerges, overpower it through money, lawyers, and patience. Rural California keeps losing because rural California has fewer people, which means less political power, which means infrastructure policy always favors urban needs over rural stability. Highway 395 runs through this same pattern, repeated across the state. Drive north from Owens Valley, and you'll pass Mono Lake. Water diverted to Los Angeles starting in 1941, ecosystem nearly destroyed, only saved by decades of litigation. Keep going, and you'll reach Bridgeport, Topaz Lake. More communities shaped by being in resource-rich terrain that urban systems can access and control. The highway connects them all. It's the thread running through California's rural interior, linking communities that exist in the shadow of Los Angeles's resource demands. These towns survive on tourism now. Highway 395 brings visitors who spend money and leave. The economic model is fundamentally extractive. Outsiders come in, consume the scenery, use the facilities, and take their dollars back to cities when they leave. Nothing builds. Nothing accumulates. The highway that once enabled water extraction now enables economic extraction. Different resource, same dynamic. Here's the cruel joke about infrastructure serving remote communities. Connection can destroy as easily as it can save. Before Highway 395, Owens Valley was isolated, difficult to reach, limited by what local resources could support. That isolation was also protection. If Los Angeles couldn't easily access the valley's water stayed in the valley. The road connected Owens Valley to the wider California economy. That connection brought opportunity, markets for agricultural products, access to goods and services, movement of people and ideas. It also brought vulnerability, because connection works both ways. The road that let valley goods reach cities also let city systems reach the valley. Once Los Angeles could easily send crews, equipment, officials, lawyers, the valley lost the protection of distance. The power imbalance became actionable. Owens Valley believed connection would mean prosperity. They were right, just not prosperity for themselves. The highway prosperous Los Angeles by enabling resource extraction from the valley. This is the dark side of infrastructure development in rural areas. Roads, transmission lines, pipelines, communication networks. They all promise to help remote communities. Sometimes they do. But they also make those communities accessible to systems powerful enough to extract value without giving back equivalent benefit. The Paiute people learned this lesson when wagon roads brought white settlers who displaced them. Owens Valley ranchers learned it when Highway 395 brought Los Angeles power to take their water. The pattern runs deeper than one highway or one valley. It's embedded in how infrastructure functions, enabling access, which enables exploitation, which leaves communities worse off than isolation would have. Drive Highway 395 through Owens Valley and try to imagine what would have happened if the road had never been built. Maybe the valley stays isolated, stays small, maintains its agricultural economy on a limited scale. Maybe it never grows beyond 7,000 people. Maybe that's failure by modern development standards, or maybe that's survival. Maybe isolation, in this case, would have been salvation. Los Angeles became one of the largest cities in the world. nearly 4 million people in the city proper, over 13 million in the greater metropolitan area, an economic powerhouse, a cultural center, a global city that rivals New York and rivals Tokyo. It exists because of the water William Mulholland stole from Owens Valley. That's not an exaggeration or rhetorical flourish. It's historical fact. Without the Los Angeles Aqueduct, the city could not have grown past its local water supply. Los Angeles, as we know it, Hollywood, the port, the aerospace industry, the endless sprawl of suburbs, was only possible because the Owens River flows south instead of into Owens Lake. So, when we talk about the tragedy of Owens Valley, we're also talking about the creation of modern Los Angeles. The two stories are inseparable. What died in the valley enabled what was born in the city. Does that justify it? That's the wrong question. Justification implies choice. Los Angeles didn't choose between growing and not growing. The city needed water to survive, found water, and took it. Stopping would have meant stopping Los Angeles itself. No politician, no engineer, no urban planner was going to make that choice. Owens Valley could have fought harder, organized better, used different legal strategies. It wouldn't have mattered. The power imbalance was too extreme. The federal government backed Los Angeles. The state backed Los Angeles. The railroads backed Los Angeles. The valley had farmers with dynamite and a righteous cause. That's not enough to win against urban systems with infinite money and patience. Mark Watterson led 70 men to seize the Alabama gates, and for 4 days, they were heroes. National newspapers covered it sympathetically. The valley finally had attention, leverage, hope that maybe this time Los Angeles would negotiate in good faith. Then the valley released the gates, and Los Angeles went back to buying land and isolating holdouts, and within 3 years the Wattersons' bank collapsed and they went to prison, and the resistance died. That's what defeat looks like when you're fighting a system designed to win. Drive Highway 395 through Owens Valley today, and you'll see stunning scenery, functional infrastructure, a road that works. You won't see what died to make that possible unless you know to look for it. The dry lake bed where Owens Lake used to be, the towns that exist but don't thrive, the landscape that could have been fertile but was sacrificed so Los Angeles could grow, the road that connected communities and then enabled their destruction. Highway 395 didn't fail. That's what makes it tragic. It succeeded at serving the system that built it, and that system never intended to save the valley.